So I will call to order the November 1st HVAC IAQ Building Committee meeting. And we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Excuse me. Okay. Thanks, Mark. Okay. Can I get a motion for approval of the 9/20/24 meeting minutes?
I'll make a go ahead, Joe.
I'll make a motion to approve the 9/24 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Changes, modifications? Very good. Good. All in favor? Accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. The 10/4/24 minutes will be tabled. We don't have those yet, so we're going to get those from Sheila soon, hopefully. All right, moving on. Updates. Phase 1, Osborne Hill. Who's going to take that this morning?
Well, I've got a couple things,
Mark, Tim?
and then we'll hand it over to Gilbane. The Mark Schweitzer Colliers, the basically two basic updates. In the folder, I put the revised plan at the tennis courts at Fairfield Woods. This came up a couple months ago where Parks and Rec was doing some work on the one grass area next to the building, and it kind of conflicted with what we were doing. They went back to the drawing board and reconfigured, and I just threw that plan in the folder to close out that portion of it. Should not affect any, it doesn't conflict with our work, so it shouldn't affect our work. The other thing in there in the folder that I put is the preliminary report from Enviromed, who works for Woodward and Kern, regarding the abatement of the tunnels. There was no asbestos found. I was amazed at the cleanliness of the tunnels, and their report kind of goes along with that.
So just to clarify, Mark, the testing was to validate there was no need, or if there was any need for abatement, and there was none found.
Correct. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Gilbane for the updates on phase 1.
Phase 1, part 2. Let me just share my screen, Jeff, if you don't mind.
Please.
Give me 1 second. Okay, let me know when you guys can see. Can you see that?
We can.
Got it.
Okay, so these are our demo.
If what you're showing is you're showing schematics or plans of the schools with
yes,
colors. Yeah,
yes,
okay,
PDF.
so you're showing the right thing.
This is a picture of France. No, so these are our demo drawings we've been working towards over the past 6 weeks. So I just wanted to use these because we just wrapped this phase up. So this is Osborne Hill. So again, we started doing demo through the corridors and then followed with the classrooms. We actually just wrapped up demo earlier this week on Tuesday evening. So we finished kind of doing a few rooms up here. We had a few minor changes due to the school, and they had a couple conflicts at night, but we were able to work around that. So in this phase 2 zone, let me just put a little polyline around here. In this phase 2 zone now, we're moving into all of our field verifications and field measurements. We actually have our first round of ductwork shop drawings that have just been submitted over to the architect and engineer for review, which is great because we, once we get approvals there and we work through any clashes, we can start to get ductwork fabricated. So right now we're moving along on schedule. Working through the process, we're seeing minimal issues at the moment with conflicts, so we're in pretty good shape there. But as over the next I'd say 4 to 5 weeks. We're going to be working through shop drawings, getting ductwork scheduled for fab, and then we will move into our installation phase, and we'll start doing, hangers, ductwork, and everything that follows that. So piping, condensate, all that other components.
So Tim, just to be the demo, the dates I'm seeing there, so the brown section, orange brownish, that says 10-2 to 10-3. Is that actually complete already, or is that this week?
Yes, everything you're seeing in this picture has been completed to this date.
That's okay, including the purple.
And
okay.
we had to shuffle a couple of these rooms this past Friday into Monday, Tuesday, just due to the school. They had a festival, I guess, this past weekend, and they had to prepare for it. So we kind of worked around their schedule to make sure we didn't impact the parents and staff that were preparing the APR and everything. But yeah, no, everything here that has a little color has been demoed. Demo is complete now at Osborne, and like I said, we're moving into the investigation, shop drawing, fabrication phase. So I'll move us over to North Stratfield. Same, pretty much the same report at all 3 schools. We finished up the demo phase as well here. So this was kind of our plan that we had been tracking with the principals and the staff. And again, here we are fully complete with all of this demo. We had, again, you just see all the different dates we were kind of tracking to throughout the month of September and October. And we have moved into the same phase as Osborne, just field verification, looking for conflicts, developing the shop drawings, and then those have not been developed fully yet. Those are actually going to be coming to us, I think, middle of next week, which is okay, because we have Osborne in for review, and we also have Woods in for review, so we're not overloading BL all at once. It's a lot to review in one shot. So again, same system here. We're on schedule, no issues. We did do the demo, obviously, through the corridor. We did not find any other asbestos that we would have had to abate. So we did kind of wrap up that ATP. You'll see that in a bit where we were. Same thing. So I'll take us over to Fairfield Woods. So this was kind of our schematic we were using for Fairfield Woods. And same report. So we got through all this demolition. We are in the same process of field verification and measurement. We do have the first round of shop drawings for ductwork in with BL for Fairfield Woods as well. And again, probably again over the next 4 to 5 weeks, we'll be doing the same process, getting stuff approved, getting material fabricated, and we'll start to do ductwork installation, followed by all the components that go with the system. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, on schedule, everything's going smooth. We've had great feedback from the teachers and staff as far as the cleanliness of the building and the cleanliness of the their rooms after each demo session. So, I'm glad we got through this next phase of demo, which was great.
Okay, great. And the inspections are all going well. No problems from the top.
Yes, we had life safety inspections every morning. Didn't have any issues there. Town's been good as well, fire marshal and building.
Okay. Rodney, Joe, any questions, you guys?
Not from me, no.
Likewise, I'm good.
Okay. Anything else, Tim, on phase 1?
No, that's it. We'll keep pushing.
Mark, anything on Fitz House to be called out, or no? All quiet.
Yeah, the update there is between the mechanical contractor and the commissioning agent. They're working through the commissioning of the 3 units up top. They have, I believe they're going back on the 14th for another round of commissioning work on it, but there were maybe a dozen items that the commission agent came up, and they're working through those with Train and getting things, the sequence of operations correct, how it needs to be set up over there.
Okay, very good. Okay. Sal, any questions or comments from you? It was all good.
Just so that it's not lost, there is something that Jesse is looking at, and maybe he wants. Is Jesse on? About the heat in the front office at North Stratfield, so he's looking through that issue at this time. We're also discussing what is specified as the lighting control. There's a code quirk that came up, so what was implemented wasn't discussed with us as far as the lighting control. So we're looking into that. I just want the committee to be aware that we're looking at that item. And the control system, that we forwarded a proposal for Fairfield Woods and Osborne for, I'll say, reintegrating the existing items, existing equipment, is still on the table, and we know that the building committee wants to look at that in the first quarter of next year. But the Fairfield Schools is still very much interested in that. So yeah, those are the items that are of concern to us, and they're being handled. And I just don't want to be remiss and not say something to the building committee that that's being worked on.
That third one was the idea of replacing the old thermostats and such with upgraded thermostats that'll talk to the central system. Is that the same?
Yeah, and it's also end devices at the mechanical units, that the actual controllers at RTUs or other items that are being controlled, HV units and things like that. So that's, we got some antiquated stuff out there, so it would be, if we didn't do something, we'll have half a very antiquated control system and modern. It might not play nice in the end of the day, and it might be,
Okay.
might be easier to commission.
I want to make sure we were talking about the same thing. That's all. Okay.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
deal.
we are.
So those are the proposals we
We
presented
tabled.
a couple months ago
Yep. Okay.
that we tabled.
Yep. Okay. I do remember that. I just want to make sure we were talking about the same thing. Okay. Thanks, Seth.
You're welcome.
I don't know. So,
Well, Jeff, were those proposals ever approved?
no, we did not approve them,
No.
Rod. We
And
tabled
how
them.
can they move forward on the work?
They're
No,
not.
No, nobody's moving forward on the work. It's still an item we're talking to the building committee about. It's
Sal just
not
wanted
work
to keep.
being done.
Sal wanted to keep it in our.
I
keep
don't
in
want it
our
to be
plate.
forgotten.
All right, I was just wanted to make sure.
What can you elaborate on the front office heat in North Stratfield? Is that just a issue? It's not blowing heat. Is it correction?
Is Jesse on?
Yeah, I'm here, Sal.
Okay, so you can explain, you can explain what it is and how it all came up, so.
Yeah, it's the existing heat in the front office is a bunch of through the wall convector units. So it's basically like a hot water convector on the inside, but there's a louver in the backside of it and through to the outside of the building. So these things are like on their last legs and failing at this point. So Sal asked us to take a look at them, look at different options for heating the front office, and we're just had someone out there at the site yesterday, and I think we're going to design some hot water cabinet unit heaters to replace the existing ones for those like 5 or 6 rooms that are in the front office, connected into the existing hot water piping that's already coming up from the tunnels underneath, and repair the wall where this louver is currently going through it, repair it to make it match the surrounding wall, to take that out, because that louver is no longer required, and in actuality we don't want it there. So this,
Yeah,
this was
and just to clarify, the unit was heat and air conditioning for the front office. So we're putting in new air conditioning, and we're left with what was there that I think was assumed to be okay for heating, and it's really not. It's problematic, it's old, it's antiquated, and it needs to be replaced. So, the question was, my question was, are the DOS and the HV units that we're putting in doing the heat? And the answer was no, we're relying on the existing heat, and that's problematic. So that's why it's being looked at. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're replacing the air conditioned part, but
I'm not even sure those old air conditioners in there function correctly in the first place.
right, which is why we're getting new air conditioning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, but the other part of it wasn't handled, so we're looking at it now.
Okay, but so technically though, there's a spend occurring, Jesse, from your side to review and design proposal solution?
no, it's a minor enough issue. We're not gonna have
Okay.
a proposal or
Okay.
any additional fees for that.
So we can anticipate an ATP at a later date for remediation.
Yeah, there'll be costs associated with making these upgrades, but not with our work on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Joe, Rod, any questions from you guys?
No, you asked it.
Okay, so moving on to the project updates for phase 2 through 5. I'm gonna take that. Our charge as a committee was to get through DD and get that submitted to the BOE and BOS, and that has happened. So I left it on here just to sort of close that out. So we won't be talking about the subsequent phases until the charge of the committee is changed. So just so everybody's aware. Tomlinson is in discussions for 2025, and I know that Board of Education and Board of Selectmen are thumb wrestling through what else is going to be done in 2025. I do anticipate, so we'll see, and then we'll see what the building committee's charge changes, if at all, through for those projects. All right, moving on, approvals. What's the fun stuff? ATPs.
All right. First one up is ATP 13, which is RFI 39, the AVB at the Electrical Room Foundation. This was previously presented as an estimate. This comes back as a final. The estimate was $3,272. The final came in at $865 at a cost savings of $2,407.
Okay, so we've said we don't have to vote on finals that come in below the approved estimate, right?
Correct.
So that's just an information only.
Yep.
ATP. Okay. So moving on to 14.
14 is R541, the concrete encasement of the conduits at Fairfield Woods. This one originally was $18,538. It came in at $46,169 for an additional request for $27,631. This was previously discussed a month ago. And
This has
then
been I just an old business. This has been tabled a couple times, right? Tim had the
Yep.
audacity to take vacation.
Right.
And we had
Yeah, I tried to run away from this one from you guys. Yeah,
and we didn't
Didn't
have
work,
a
though.
quorum
Didn't
last week.
work.
So you want to I guess we might as well pull this
Yeah,
forward
let's-
and discuss it now.
yeah. Let's talk about this one. I know this one's been, this was a big bust in our estimate. So yeah, this was the work that, back in the summer we did when the UI team started stepping on site to kind of review our conditions and transformer layouts. So really what happened with this one was we did all the work that we had to do base contract, which was trenching for the primaries, excavation, laying the primary conduits with Ferguson, backfilling, and putting an asphalt patch on it, right? We brought UI to the site to review the transformer location because we kind of had to make sure that everything was set in place by their needs. Upon doing that, we discussed the work that we had previously done. It was disclosed that we did not encase the concrete or encase the primaries in concrete, and UI, said we need those need to be encased in concrete, and they shared with us kind of all of their back end protocol documents that I think are in this ATP as backup. So when we were kind of trying to put together an estimate, I think the issue that we had when putting the estimate together is that we just did not understand the full, I guess, capacity of what we were going to have to redo in this scope, because it wasn't just uncovering what we dug. We had to dig down deeper in certain areas. We had to put in certain elements of chairs for the conduit. And really, when we were estimating this, essentially what happened is the estimate for time for doweling was just a lot less than what they actually took on site. I will say this: the price that we have at the table has been very much vetted by myself and our team. We compared it to our daily reports. We made sure that everything was apples to apples. So the cost that doweling is charging us, in my eyes, is very true to what had to be redone. It's just, unfortunately, myself, I didn't estimate this as best as I could have, and just with some of the knowledge I didn't have. And in a lot of areas, we had to dig down about a foot deeper throughout most of the trench, which, again, that starts to equate additional time for backfill, additional material for backfill, and additional time just on the initial excavation. So when we looked at it compared to what our estimate was, it's a good bit over, of course. But that's where we kind of stand with that one, as far as why there's a gross difference in our ATP estimate to where it actually landed when the work was performed on site.
Tim, there's also repaving also, because it was.
Yes,
paved.
we had to repave. Yes, we had to repave the trench. It was the scope was pretty much done 100%, and I don't think we conveyed that in the initial ATP. And we tried to be as accurate as we could in estimate, and instead of just throwing a big number at it, and I think that's where we came into trouble on this one.
So I guess my initial question is around the disconnect from UI. So what does UI submit to you guys from expectations before the shovel hits the ground, and how did that radical disconnect occur that they came back with standards? Is that a Gilbane miss, a UI change? What happened there?
I think that, well, I don't know if Jesse wants to step into, because I know a lot of this was coordinated earlier on in the design phase, but I don't believe UI, some of these requirements look like they were added as of last year. So I'm not sure how much they were circulated. But we wouldn't normally have UI come out to inspect the trench. And I think what happened is we went ahead and did the work based on what we were expecting to do for the contract drawings, both depth and means and methods. And when they came out, they started to ask questions about said trench.
Tim, how deep was the trench? The original?
Our trench initially was in the neighborhood of like 30 inches, 32 inches, and UI required 36 inches of coverage over their primaries. So we had to dig down. Let's just say another 4 to 6 inches to accommodate that. But when we had to encase it in concrete, we needed to account for the chairs that hold the conduits off the floor of the trench. That's like another 3 to 4 inches. So really, it grew. The whole trench grew like close to a foot. And upwards of 380.
The Connecticut State Building Code allows for 24 inches for primaries under streets.
Right, which if you look at BL's drawings, it says 24 to 30 inches of depth.
So why did we go deeper? Just because UI said so?
Essentially, and they gave us their protocol document, which showed a 36-inch minimum coverage. And like I said, Rodney, that if you look at that, we looked at that document because we really tried to dig in deep on this. Like that document was edited last December of 23. So I'm not sure if that's a new element that they incorporated into their protocol that just really hadn't circulated to the project. But that's what we had found when we looked at that.
So when this was first estimated, was it just your estimating department that did this, or did you get estimates from the contractors in the field?
No, normally for ATPs, we'll typically do an estimate based on, you know, the scope of work, unit rates that we have in the contract. And when we were doing this work, because we were trying to keep schedule, we did the estimate. I did the estimate myself. You know, I'm not going to hide anything. I sat here, we looked at with the team, we looked at what we had going on the field. We said, okay, you know, I think this is another 3.5 days to kind of dig this back up, recase it, and then it ended up being closer to 7 days of additional work. I mean, you know, total work,
Right.
based on, because they had to dig down deeper and they had to backfill everything. So, you know, again, every 12 inches or so, they have to tamp with the compacting machine. So, you know, you dig down another foot, you're adding another bunch of time just to do that compaction, you know, and these primary trenches are about almost 400 linear feet from the street to up by the transformer location that we brought them to. So it's,
Tim, from my perspective, I'm not challenging the 46,000 as a valid cost. I'm trying to understand who's liable for that cost more than the right. If UI's coming up with a new spec in 2023, not distributing that spec, and does that supersede state building code, their operating standards?
Yeah.
The answer to that is yes. That they do not have to comply with building codes, and they make their own rules.
Well, they got to comply with minimum building code.
So the building
But
code,
if they want to,
they can
if they
go
want to
above
exceed
and
the
beyond
building
that.
code,
Well, not necessarily.
Well, it's not necessarily the building code. It's also area of jurisdiction. You got DPUC that regulates utilities, so they're operating under those rules. Where they cross each other, both sets of rules would apply. You got the building code that's under public safety up on the state level, and then you have the water company that's working for DPUC or under DPUC. So they propagate their regulations through different silos of the state government, and when they overlap, the typical rule is the more stringent applies, and that goes in any layer. You might have a federal law that trumps what the state's doing on stuff, like ADA. So it's not that they're exceeding building codes; they're working their codes, and that happens in many avenues.
Yeah, I guess and what I said before, it still is kind of true. Like the utilities do not comply with the electric codes. They're not required to comply with those. So there is, it's a gray area where they meet and they're in between.
Correct.
But
Okay,
that
then that begs a differ. Why didn't we pick these up on the construction documents?
yeah, it's been 3 months we've been asking that. No,
I know.
that was the first question.
Well, the 3 months, we've been 3 months in investigation, but it's the work was done 3 months ago, right? But what's the question still stands. Why? How did it get missed?
Tim, I don't know if you want to go a little background on this. Happy to jump in. And Jesse, during the bid package or the scopes of work development or the bid documents, give a little bit background as to how this came about with the RFI response and the coordination between us and BL as it relates to this topic. Primarily, actually, it's not so much the depth of the service, but most has to do with the concrete encasement versus not to concrete encase. The scope, the way it was understood at the time of development or bidding. Effectively, I think we've mentioned this, effectively when we went to GMP and awarded the contracts, no concrete encasement was included. I think that's kind of the baseline. So this cost that you see here, I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of the actual concrete encasement was not included in any of the bids. So that's already just an added scope right there. So I think there is definitely the depth of the conduit that added more to this cost. There's obviously the re-excavation and repaving that added more additional cost beyond the concrete encasement. That was never part of anybody's scope. That's kind of where this ended up, unfortunately. And I think just to add to Tim's comments earlier is that when he developed the ATP after I reviewed it with him, is that we did not include the cost of basically removing the existing pavement, disposing of it, and the repaving, which is a significant cost. That's what kind of exasperated this cost even further. Beyond just the re-excavation for the conduits and putting them deeper is not significant. Ferguson, obviously, Electric had some cost also for resetting their conduits. You have to remove them and reset them. So they had some cost there. And, we can go through the breakdown of the backup, if you will, but you kind of get to see the components where truly added scope versus rework is really, that's what this 46,000 represents. There's two parts to it. There's the added scope, complete add, and there's the rework. So I don't know if, like I said, it's an unfortunate miss, I think, on this one. As far as us estimating the initial cost, it should have been more representative of the actual scope that's being performed, so you guys are fully informed when you authorize this. And the other part of it is the concrete encasement, like I said, was really, as a byproduct of the original award, was not included in anybody's bid, and it was discussed during the bidding process that the team elected to carry it either as an allowance or deal with it as a change condition, which is kind of part of it here.
When you say the team, what team? It
I was
sounds
talking about Gilbane and the design team when we were going through this, Rodney.
It's unfortunate that the design team and Gilbane, the construction team, decided to do a change of conditions, without informing the building committee.
Agreed.
It's a very, that's a very unfortunate. It's costing us, $50,000 round numbers.
Yeah.
So I have a real problem with this one.
I mean, it's often when, like I said, I don't know how to add more information to it. That's kind of the reality at the time where the team reviewed it, and kind of does happen it was basically an RFI, a bid RFI that was discussed at length, and it was elected to proceed in that fashion. We treated it like any other bid RFI. Sometimes we carry an allowance for this, and maybe that's what we should have done. We should have carried an allowance within the GMP for that specific scope, so we can deal with it then. At the time, it was decided that let's just not carry the allowance because we didn't know the extent of the concrete encasement. It was not too clear based on the information we had at the time. So that's where we ended up on this one.
Yeah, Jeff and Rod, just to clarify a little bit, there was definitely miscommunication there during these bid RFIs. Some of that, I know our engineers answered the question, what they thought was a clear answer, and Gilbane didn't necessarily understand that answer, so couldn't implement it. So you asked before, the construction documents do show concrete encasement of primary conduits. It's definitely shown on there, but the bid RFI was clarifications, and we're asking some more detailed questions about it. And that's where this, we can only say it's an unfortunate communication that happened during that time with the bid RFIs and the correspondence back and forth, which we spent weeks on that one. So, that's kind of how we ended up where we are.
Is it a fair assessment though that represents half of the cost and the other half is around the rework portion of this?
We can present the ATP.
Because the original 18,538 was to do the trenching, the conduit, the encasement. And then we're coming back with a much higher number, $20,000 additional to that roughly, which is reflective of the UI mandated redig and rework.
Yeah, we can show you the backup to it.
So there's two issues going on, but I don't want to conflate them necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm a little, just dealing with the second one first, I'm still a little confused I'm trying to understand in my mind how UI works in the sense of, does the guy just I'm saying the person shows up in the car and gets out and starts waving a stack of papers and saying, well, this week's standards are this, and redig your work. Like I'm confused to if it's a year old, who's culpable to understand that standard was in play, and how do they communicate out changes? This seems rather arbitrary in their behaviors. And is there a call
I mean,
out? Do they have quarterly meetings with B&L or Gilbane to say these are the changes that we're implementing this year, this quarter, as from construction changes? How are you guys made aware of UI's changes of expectations and building codes, if you will?
I mean, often when the topic comes up, whether it's a utility company or a building official or a fire marshal shows up on the job site and requires certain elements changed, we always communicate that to the design team, and we discuss them at the weekly meetings as well. So that way everybody's informed. That's how the process works. Because ultimately, whatever they're requesting, if it's outside of the contract documents, is a change condition. It could result in an add or a credit, depends on what the issue is. And we often communicate that to the design team. And I think there was an RFI associated with this issue. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. And I don't know how, I mean, obviously the design team, when UI came about, we looped in the design team into this issue, and they said, yes, we're going to have to do, and I think Jesse mentioned that earlier, is that, yes, we're going to have to comply with UI's requirements because they are the one that controls this utility. And those are their mandates effectively. So what were the mandates at the time of the design versus what they are now? I don't know. I can't speak for that. But we realized that's how we arrived here, is that they came out and they said, do you need to encase it in concrete? And you need to be, I guess what Tim indicated, you need to be a minimum 36-inch cover.
But Jesse, does UI meet with you guys on an annual basis to go over their changes to their requirements? Is it ever formally done or even informally done? Is there a packet that's mailed out to you guys, or
They have like a design guide online and that we've downloaded. I know it sits on the electrical engineer who sits right next to me, who's our lead electrical on this project, has that UI design manual sitting on his desk. It's a couple hundred pages. It includes all of the details and requirements and things like that. So, and I think the last one we had was, I thought it was toward the end of last year. So, you know, they republish those, and it's things you can find on their website. And then when we design, we'll coordinate with a representative from UI to go back and forth about, hey, how can we do this? Because we have to run everything by them. You know, everything upstream of the transformer is their purview. So like we don't design anything without say, hey, here's our design drawings. What do you think? What do we need to do? What do we need to change? And go through that process with them.
And then they sign off
Jesse,
on that?
what was the last set that UI got to review? Did they get the contract documents? Like the 90%?
I don't know exactly what they have. That part I don't know. You know, it's
Okay.
kind of like, you know, we put together a site plan, show it, and then present it to them. And then out of that meeting, we'd make revisions that they ask for. But I don't know if we typically send it to them after everything's done, or just take the comments they have and make sure they're all incorporated.
So at some point, they're given drawings or design documents that they're reviewing and commenting on and signing off on to say this is what we're expecting.
Yeah, except when you say signing off, they're not going to often they're not giving us written permission. You know, they might have a meeting with us and just tell us what they want different on them or something, or we have meetings out in the field with them too. We go out and walk the sites with them on every project before during the design process too.
Okay, I understood, Jesse, but I'm trying to understand how we went from that review process with UI and digging 32 inches or whatever, 32 inches, and then them coming out and having a totally different set of standards at that next meeting and going down to 40 inches plus. So I'm still trying to understand where that breakdown occurred, or if it's just you know, these things from UI keep coming up, and it seems like this arbitrary, these arbitrary specs that get pulled out by somebody at any given time.
Yeah, it's kind of, Sal had a good point before. It's kind of like when you have a building official come out to a building. So at these schools, the Fairfield building inspector is coming out. He's finding things that were code violations from the 1990s. And he's making us repair them. He's making us fix them. It's the same with UI. They really have that power to basically demand whatever they want in order for them to do it, to do the project. So I guess I've always just summed it up as it's an unfortunate reality of monopolies that they have this power to just do that. But you know, there's no proof of this. I think the guy on Fairfield Woods got annoyed somehow because we talked to him later and he was like, "What's going on over there?" You know, and I think the miscommunication we were talking about before between us and Gilbane during the bidding process, you know, so we had coordination with UI, we had other coordination with Gilbane, which is where we had the miscommunication on this one. And then UI went out to the site and it's like, basically they were saying, we coordinated all this stuff in design. Why is it not installed that way? So I think, yeah, it's the same thing. Again, going back to like the building inspector type of thing. If they see mistakes in the field, they get even more critical and they look for even more things to comment on. I think it's the same thing with UI. They see something that like didn't meet their standards and they all of a sudden are looking for even more items to comment on and more to, you know, demand.
Well, you know, that's all well and good, but we're asking why the standards were not applied before construction or before the GMP. Why were the UI standards that theoretically sit on the head, you know, your head electrical engineer's desk not applied in this case? That's what we're asking. We're not asking, I mean, if an inspector goes out and he changes things just because he wants to change things, that's inappropriate. But if he's changing things because they're incorrect based on their standards that were issued, that's a problem. And that's what we're asking. I believe that's what we're asking. That's what I'm asking.
And I mean, my impression is that the details on our construction documents show their requirements. But it was the coordinating that with Gilbane with their questions that we, like I said, we answered, the engineers thought they answered them clearly enough.
Do the construction documents show encasement of the conduits in concrete?
Yes.
Do the construction documents show a depth of 36 inches?
They show a depth of 3 feet above the concrete encasement, and then they show a 13.5-inch depth of the concrete encasement. So the center line of the conduits is right at 36, maybe 37 inches deep.
Okay.
I can share the detail if you want to see that, Rod.
Well, you don't.
Yeah,
have to
we
do
should
it
bring
now.
it up, Jesse.
And so that goes back to Gilbane is how did you guys miss it if it's on the construction documents?
Well, we didn't miss it. Again, just to be clear, before we even received bids from the bidders, there was a bid RFI. So I think the depth that, well, let's look at the depth to make sure everybody's on the same page as it relates to what's UI came up with and what's currently shown. If you look at the details, says
So here's primary feeder.
Yeah.
Let me just zoom in here so you can see it.
So if this was installed, this would have been approved. This drawing, if it was installed in this fashion.
Well,
There's a couple of parts of, go ahead, Jesse. I think the 3-foot dimension, which is the 36-inch dimension, is the one in question. What we installed, what UI came back and they wanted 3-foot cover, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim,
yeah, this is,
the 3-foot cover is on from the concrete up to finish grade.
yeah, and
Yes,
that's
yeah.
here, that line there, see this line here?
Mhm.
That's the top of the concrete encasement. See concrete encased duct bank detail.
Mhm.
Sorry about that.
Oh.
Sorry, guys. These things, when you try to highlight it, sometimes go crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it says here, see concrete encased duct bank detail for requirements. So we have 3 feet to the top of the concrete encasement, which is this line here. And then it refers to the second detail for the duct bank, the concrete encased duct bank detail. Let me scroll out here and go to that detail. That is this one here, typical reinforced concrete encased conduit banks. So I had the 3 feet cover on top of this, then you have the concrete encasement below it here, which is this total depth of 13.5 here.
So I guess, Tim, maybe you can take over and kind of walk us through what was installed and why, aside of that concrete encasement, which kind of threw, what was installed.
So again, I think that some of the other issues we had is, and this is where the RFIs came up and we didn't have clarity, is if we go, I'm going to share a drawing. I'm going to share, so that's the electrical drawing, right? Most of our site work guys will bid off of a site work drawing, not
ahead.
an electrical drawing. So I'm going to share the site work drawing.
Yeah, and
This
Tim,
was the site work drawing.
Hang on, Jesse, let Tim,
And we had this here where we had showing a conduit. We had 24 to 30 inches, which is why we had asked the question too about the concrete location. So in the bidding process, our goal was to not have the bids be all over the place by people making interpretations as to what needed concrete versus what didn't. And a lot of times the rule of thumb was if you could not get to this depth, you had to encase it. So say you were digging and you could only get down 18 inches, you had to encase it because you couldn't get to the minimum depth. So when we had this detail, we just said, I don't know if the bidders are going to be all over the place. If this is going to be, an issue with getting level scope. So we wanted to clarify locations with BL. We didn't know if they said, hey, can we put it, where is the concrete going to be? Do we know? And when we couldn't come to that, we said, okay, well, maybe we need to pull it out of the scope and carry it as a change order or an allowance. And that is where, to Amar's point earlier, the concrete was not included in Dowling's base bid. Because in our bid RFI log from back in February, we had come to the conclusion that we didn't believe there was enough information on the documents to know where that concrete would apply.
can I ask another question? Can you tell me where the concrete, I guess we can bring the RFI, but can you show on the drawings what the documents at the time stated as it relates to concrete encasement? The start, I guess, of the issue, how it came about. Just so at least everybody is ruled in. Obviously now we have 2 details, unfortunately, so.
Yeah, hang on.
So the site work contractors bid the site work to dig the trenches for the conduit without looking at the electrical drawings,
Well-
or ignoring the electrical, or picking the less stringent route, which I don't think they would do that because then they
Yeah,
may have to eat something. But
they would not do that, and maybe that should have been another RFI, is like which depth controls the 36 minimum or the 24 to 30 inch dimension. So there's that, I'm not sure if that was a separate RFI that talked about the depth of the conduits.
I bet you it never happens again.
Well,
Yeah.
Amar, that's the nature of the miscommunication we've talked about all along here.
No, I understand. And I mean, the building committee is obviously looking for clarity as to the cost and how things went sideways. I totally appreciate that. And I understand that. We're trying to basically tell you, I think the team did the best they can at the time of then the information was presented to us and come up with we felt we came up with the best approach to the issue. And again, that particular ATP, what exasperated the issue is that us not estimating the right amount when we presented that ATP to you. Had we presented it back then to you with an appropriate scope and cost, meaning the repaving, the re-excavation of that trench, I think we were probably, at that time, you would have done a better, more informed decision. I totally appreciate that and I understand, and I'll take that on us, okay? That we failed in estimating the proper scope so that way you guys can make the best decision.
So if we have a change order being presented in, say, we could pick a dollar value at a later time, but say $10,000 or more, and it's a change order, so the contractor's on site, can we seek their input as well as leveling against one of our estimates in the future?
We do, and we do that actually quite often. What we do,
Okay.
I mean, it depends on the nature of the urgency of the issue. I mean,
Yeah.
as you can see, often we presented ATP to you. I would say 90% of them have come well within or below or around the number. Now, yes, we can ask the sub, we often do say, hey, what do you think it's going to be in terms of providing that cost estimate? And if they, either we wait, but it depends on the timing of the issue when we present to you. This happened to be that our team did the best they can at the time. However, they did not include, and you could see it clearly, blamed. You could see it. I was like, where's the repaving here? And that's a significant amount of money and other issues. I was like, it's really the dowling piece was the one that had the biggest bust. But the one thing, what sways it is that if you got to take the concrete out, because the concrete was never part of it to begin with, that's a complete add. And we verified it based on the daily reports. It's not like they were gouging, because they gave us the quotes, we provided the quotes, and we backed it into our daily reports when they were on site physically doing the work. And it seemed to match very, very well in terms of labor and material and time. So we know that Dowling's number did not, they were not gouging on that by any stretch.
So I guess,
And we're not saying that, but when you're saying that the concrete was never in, I mean, it's obvious that it was in the contract drawings. I don't know what the RFI said.
We could
We
show you
haven't
the
seen the
RFI.
RFI.
Rod.
I would love to see it, and I'd love to see the engineer's response.
Yeah,
so I guess from my perspective, we're looking for clarification, culpability, and what contingency funds appropriate to pay for this, right? That's really the three pieces of this. We're dancing around the maypole here a bit as far as the clarification aspect. So maybe the best right way to do this is to have that more formally documented, so we have something to work off of because I
And very well said, Jeff. I mean, I think, and I was gonna, as we were talking around this topic, in my opinion, I'm happy to take out of CM contingency anything above and beyond the concrete work, if you will, because that was never part of it.
So Mara,
And-
can you work with Tim then and Jesse to get a document together that sort of explains how we got there, your proposal for.
Yeah, I think.
I'm not saying culpability. You can determine that in your mind, but Gilbane's culpable for X percentage or whatever, and then we can apply the appropriate contingency funds for that 46,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. Then what we can do is I can tell you that X amount should be up. We'll give you a separate ATP for CM contingency usage versus what's in that remains out of owner contingency, and that's fine. We can do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no motion on the table, so we'll press on then.
Yep, that's fine.
We need to reshare the agenda. Sorry, it's not up.
Get out of here before lunchtime today. So Mark, you're sharing 19. It's an FYI only.
Yep. And then the next one, the ATP 21 for Fairfield Woods is the last one that really needs discussion. The other two or the other three are FYIs. They were estimates that came in less than. So ATP 21, relocation of the site utility pole. Whoops. I want to go back there. Originally, it was estimated at $20,720. and the final came in at $32,727 for a request for additional $12,007.
So this one's a little more straightforward. This was, again, UI shifted the pole location. They added a brand new pole to the island in between the roundabout of Fairfield Woods. We had already done the work in the ground because we started from the pole that was already on the street over here. If you see in the grade little area right where Mark's cursor is. So we started the trench from there when we started doing this work, because you have to start from the origin point. So after their visit out to site, they brought to our attention that they are going to be setting a new utility pole, because I believe the old one was tapped out and they didn't have any more space on it. So they wanted to put the new one right where the blue arrow is. So what we had to do is we had to go and resaw cut, open up the trench, this was a new trench. This wasn't even an existing trench. We had to resaw cut, excavate, and bring out a new trench with conduits over to the new location, per UI's change of logistics. Our initial estimate, again, we were pretty much on the money with Ferguson, based on linear footage of conduit installed. This also was concrete covered. The doweling shift in cost was mainly due to unforeseen conditions. So in that area, we had to dig down deeper than expected, not because of any BL detail or any design, but just because of obstructions in the ground. Closer to the pole, we went down somewhere in the neighborhood of, I believe, 7.5 to 8.5 feet, which then kicked in the need for shoring. We had to bring in additional shoring and install that, steel jacks and all that to keep the trench from collapsing. So that added additional cost to doweling and time, because now we had to add additional fill material, additional backfill. So that's where the difference in cost came from doweling's ATP to this one. We estimated it based on a 36-inch deep trench, which is what we carried, obviously, all in the initial scope we just spoke about. But as we realized we got closer to the pole, the last 10 feet or so, 15 feet, we had to go down pretty deep and start declining that trench to get to the proper depth at the pole. And because of that depth, when we do the pole connections coming up on 11/5 next week, we had to have UI bring out a pole holding truck, because we are so deep at that area that the pole could be undermined and collapse when we do work on it. So it is just the nature of where we were digging.
So
Yep.
the UI charge just for the truck?
Yes, Rodney.
Yeah, of course.
$2,000 to bring a pole holding truck out to hold the pole.
Jesus Christ. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
But,
I will
yeah.
say from a lots of engineers on the call, so many of you are familiar with lean, and from a process improvement perspective, I'm, and to quote Yogi Berra, right? I'm having deja vu all over again here. It's another scenario where UI is coming in at some late point with a change, and I'm still struggling to understand how. So maybe how do we engage UI differently, better, to get better clarity, so we're not constantly changing construction to adjust to a late change. It's rhetorical. I'm not really looking for an answer right now, so I'm not looking for anybody to weigh in. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we have to? Wendy, welcome to the team. That's one of the sort of asks or lean-ins is to have these project managers from the town maybe help with some of that. So again, I think it's rhetorical at this point, but this is at least the sixth occasion where we've had a change because of a UI standard deviation from what was originally done.
Right.
At least six, and I've only been at this for less than a year, right? So less than a year, God, it's less than 6 months. So,
but to be fair, Jeff, you are running 3 different sites, 3 different projects. So you have that compounding. You do have that compounding effect.
but it's
where
clearly
you might not have noticed it if it was just a single job, and you might just go, oh, happen twice. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I'm not-
yeah,
Well,
I'm
yeah.
running block for UI.
think you
Trust
would
me.
notice a
Trust me, I'm not
$70,000
running block for
changeover.
UI, but
I think you would notice a $70,000 change order for one
Oh,
site.
yeah, I trust me, we've been through utilities are always a real kick in the behind.
Yeah,
Always.
no, I don't disagree. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody said a
Yeah,
monopoly
they're the
earlier.
tail wagging the dog sometimes. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion to approve ATP 21 relocation of site utility pole with a modification to the amount of $32,727, increasing the original ATP in the amount of $12,007.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So the other two.
And that is it.
The other two
Or
are
FYIs.
they're FYI in the sense that they're adjustments downward in both fairly significant proportionality wise. So those are good. Okay.
Well, we did have one. There's UI where we had a win. You see that one, number 11?
Concrete encasement.
That's got UI in the title, and it's not
Only
a bus.
per UI.
Actually, I kind of like the one above it. Good estimating on
Yeah.
that one. So can I take that back to contingency?
I guess I'm a better hazmat estimator, I guess.
I don't know about that. but
Well, I don't know about that.
You covered yourself 10 times.
All right.
Yes, we got to mention these two because, well, at least the first one because it's a large.
Yeah,
fee.
I just want to make sure that, I mean, we do the best we can with those. Unfortunately, sometimes it's concealed area. It's hard to put a number on it, but move on. We're good.
Yeah. Don't tell I guess don't tell UI about the Osborne dig. Okay.
Oh, they'll find something else. Yeah.
Moving on to invoices.
Invoices. There are a bunch of them, but there are pretty well separated and hopefully pretty easy. First one up is Save More invoice 10. This is for their work in September. The amount is $17,005. Yeah, $5. Signed off by the engineer of record. And it is basically for the work in September.
Just a question on this. What's a CX agent?
Commissioning.
Commissioning agent.
Oh, commissioning agent. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I've never seen that acronym before. Sorry.
That's what we need, more acronyms. Thank you, whoever introduced that new one.
Well, engineers being lazy don't want to write commissioning all the time. So
Easy,
Whoa.
easy.
No, Mark.
I've got
engineers love acronyms. We just like them.
That's it.
Mark
Yes.
can be self-deprecating on that. He's an engineer too,
exactly.
so he can make fun of engineers.
They're overworked and they need to save time.
Mhm, mhm.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hence we cut and paste a lot, which gets us into trouble as we see.
All right.
I make a recommendation to approve Save More's invoice number 10 dated 9/30/2024 in the amount of $17,005.
I'll second the motion.
Yeah, just a correction. It's not a recommendation, but a motion. But thank you, Rodney.
Make it.
Very good. all in favor of the motion?
I'll get an acronym for that. Aye.
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 All right. Motion carries. Moving on to BL.
Next one is BL, basically invoice 17 for phase 1 for Osborne HVAC and vestibule, North Stratfield HVAC and vestibule, and Woods HVAC and vestibule.
I make a motion to approve BL Company's invoices in total for at the amount of $67,049.50.
I'll second the motion.
Hearing a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. On to Colliers.
Next two,
Uh,
yep.
I'll
next
make a
two
motion
are
to accept.
Colliers.
Okay, Mark,
Right.
hold on. I'll make a motion to accept Colliers in two invoices in the total amount of $28,832.62.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Mark?
No.
That's just your standard Colliers bills, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. Both for
All right.
August and September.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you.
Next up, I'll make a motion to accept Van Zelm's two invoices for September and October in the total amount of $14,493.48.
I'll second that motion.
Take a second, any discussion? Good, all in favor?
Aye.
And lastly, Tri-State Materials Testing.
Lastly, yep, I'll make a motion to approve and accept Tri-State Materials Testing for September, October, or actually 3 in September, 1 in October invoices for the total amount of $4,793.
I'll second that motion.
Hearing a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good. Okay, please invoices, old business, we talked about that. The timing of the hazmat review for the tunnel, is that pending or is that in?
The preliminary report is in the folder.
So does that hearing that it's nice and clean and there's no hazmat issues, I assume that the tunnel is what will be used for the electrical conduits for Woods?
Yes.
That was Jesse. Okay.
No, it's Tim.
Okay, Tim, sorry. Yeah, that's why I was clarifying. Okay. And the existing heating work at North Stratfield, is that wrapped up? There was some continuing work that we had approved some investigation on. There was some micro leaks and whatnot. Is that all
the
wrapped up?
pneumatics. Yeah, the pneumatics, everything is working as it should. We're working on just wrapping up the final costs on that. I should hopefully have that in the next week or so.
Okay. And there was no discussion on the security vestibules? Is there, Mark, that's just progressing as far as material procurement and manufacturing?
Correct. The Cherry Hill's on board. We met with them last week, and getting them on board, get them in Procore, get them coordination with the other trades on the vestibules, and then get the shop drawings in.
Okay.
It's a target date for those, Mark.
They're what, 12 to 14 weeks out, so fabrication and to get them on site. So I believe they're 6 to 8 weeks for shop drawings, Tim.
They're two to 4 weeks for shop drawing development, and yeah, about 14 weeks for fabrication. So right now they're like Mark said, we had a kickoff meeting last week with them. We got them kind of acclimated and got them kicked off with shop drawings. We're expecting shop drawings somewhere in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So hopefully before Thanksgiving, we can get those over to BL for review and approval. And as soon as we can get them approved, we'll start the 14-week fabrication clock to getting material ready for delivery to site. Which again, the vestibules cannot be touched until school's out, June 15th, June 16th.
There's a significant cushion in there from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we're pushing hard. We don't want to take any risks, and I
Understood,
know
but
Amar's
14
going
weeks brings
through-
us
Yeah.
into early spring, and we can't do anything
Yeah,
until June.
yeah.
We actually have
Glass
a
and
couple
glazing
months.
can be tricky. Yep. So we want product there as soon as possible, so it's ready for us when we need it.
Okay, Rodney or Joe, any other old business from you guys?
No,
No.
All right. New business, I have none. Rodney, Joe, anything from you guys on new business?
nothing for me.
No, nothing for me.
Very good. All right. Our next meeting is November 15th. Appreciate everyone's time. Turn your clocks back this Saturday. And see you soon. All right.
Happy
make a
voting,
motion
everybody.
Make a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.